October 6, 2025. The skies over Volchansk, Belgorod Oblast, Russia, are quiet. Too quiet. Out of the thick morning fog, 20 suicide drones swoop down from the treetops, hovering just meters above the ground, followed by 7 HIMARS missiles launched from secret Ukrainian positions across the border. Their target? A heavily fortified $180 million military food warehouse filled with rations for 10,000 troops, more than 60,000 gallons of fuel, and enough supplies to sustain a 6-month offensive deep into eastern Ukraine. On paper, it was a fortress. Protected by the most advanced weapons in Russia's air defense system, S-400 interceptors, Panzer S-1 guns, and Kasika-4 jamming nets, it was supposed to be impregnable. But Ukraine didn't play by the rules. They're going to destroy it. Strike now. Can a swarm of cheap, low-tech drones and precision-guided missiles destroy a fortress built on billions of dollars? Is this the most daring logistical attack of the war, or just the beginning of something bigger? Join me as I find out. October 6, 2025, 5:45 a.m. Just north of the Ukrainian border, a still fog shrouds the Volchansk Military Logistics Center in Russia's Belgorod Oblast. But this is no ordinary supply depot. It's Russia's largest military food storage facility ever built. A $180 million logistics fortress built to feed nearly 10,000 troops for 6 months straight without resupply. This isn't a backup supply. It's the backbone of Russia's winter offensive, a masterpiece of a supply chain holding hundreds of tons of wheat, canned beef, freeze-dried rations, and calorie-dense nutrition packets. Inside, rows of armored Ural trucks, each capable of carrying 8 tons of food, await the final dispatch order. Outside, armed guards with AK-74s patrolled in 6-hour shifts, their boots crunching on frost-covered gravel, unaware that above them, something unusual was gathering in the sky. Russian officials had proudly announced just days earlier, "Volchansk will sustain our frontline forces during the critical phase of military readiness." It was to be the final prep before Russia unleashed its next assault toward Kharkiv, aimed at breaking the American-backed logistics corridor fueling Ukraine's resistance. But Ukraine understood the implications. They understood that attacking the convoy was futile. The warehouse was the heart of it. Destroying the warehouse would not only burn the food, it would starve an entire army. Miles away, inside a cold underground command center near Kharkiv, a Ukrainian officer leans into his headset. His voice is calm, clinical, confirming targets. Initiate drone phase. This would not be a frontal assault. It would be a surgical amputation, delivered with ghost-like precision. And the first signal was already on its way. 5:52 a.m. The fog over Volchansk thickens. Visibility drops below 100 feet. Perfect. Ukraine's most deceptive weapon isn't speed or firepower, it's confusion. High above the warehouse, 10 Ukrainian Shark thermal drones, each equipped with 30 XATS zoom infrared optics, begin their silent descent. Flying just 50 feet above the treetops, they scan, map, and designate. They're not alone. Trailing behind them is a tight formation of 10 FPV kamikaze drones, each 3D printed, stripped down, and loaded with a small explosive charge. But their mission isn't just destruction, it's deception. As the drones close in, they begin releasing dozens of radar decoys, cheap foil munitions programmed to mimic the erratic flight patterns of birds. On Russian radar, what's actually a military formation now appears as a flock of migratory starlings. Inside the Volchansk radar command room, screens begin to flicker. Operators spot unusual movement clusters. But the AI-assisted targeting filter, built to ignore low-priority signals like wildlife, flags them as non-threats. A colonel shrugs. Probably birds. The screen is dismissed with a wave of a hand. What they don't know is that Ukraine has been perfecting this illusion for over 18 months. Engineers embedded false avian behavior patterns into the drone's movement algorithms, fooling billion-dollar Russian detection systems with $400 gadgets and a bit of clever programming. Then comes the second miscalculation. Russia activates Kasika-4, a $50 million mobile electronic warfare unit designed to scramble drone signals and jam GPS. It works. briefly. But Kasuga is a glutton for power, consuming enough electricity to supply a small village. Within 15 minutes, it overheats and enters auto cooldown mode. The radar ghosts continue dancing. In Ukraine's command bunker, a voice comes through. Golden window open. Proceed with Phase 2. Suddenly, the silent sky turns electric. All 10 kamikaze drones drop low, flooding blind spots in the Russian defense network. The Shark drones paint the perimeter, tracking every guard, every truck, every shadow. Volchansk isn't just vulnerable now, it's naked. What the Russian officers believe is a radar glitch is in fact the opening act of precision chaos. And in just a few minutes, the sky will scream. Could this strike expose the fatal flaw in Russia's illusion of impenetrable air defense? 6 a.m. The windows were wide open. 47 seconds later, the Russian electronic shield, Kasuga 4, was disabled to cool down. And that was all Ukraine needed. From 2 launch sites near Kharkiv and Kupiansk, 7 HIMARS missiles tore through the sky. Flying at speeds exceeding Mach 2.7, their trajectories were low, fast, and deliberately chaotic. They didn't fly in straight lines. They weaved through the fog like digital ghosts, designed to appear and disappear on radar. Inside the Volchansk command center, the alarm finally sounded. Russian officers ran frantically as missile signals flooded the radar screens. Orders thundered. Activate the S-400s now! 3 interceptors were launched, each worth more than a fighter jet. They soared and successfully intercepted 3 HIMARS missiles in mid-air, flaming flowers in the clouds. Moments later, the Panzer S-1 system joined the fight, firing 24 57 E-6 interceptors. But it was too late. The Ukrainian drone swarm had jammed the targeting system. Fake heat signatures, decoy radar pulses. The Panzer fired wildly into the fog, destroying nothing but trees and darkness. 4 HIMARS missiles penetrated. 6:05 a.m. The first warhead struck the fuel depot. 60,000 gallons of diesel fuel erupted, creating a shockwave so powerful it flattened a row of trucks parked nearby. The second missile hit the depot's distribution center, cutting off power, communications, and logistics in a single strike. Then the third missile found its target, a convoy of transport trucks loaded with dry food and ammunition. The explosion turned the convoy into a series of fireballs. 11 trucks went up in flames, each carrying enough fuel and supplies to sustain a unit for a month. The domino effect was terrifying. Steel warped, hatches blown off, tarpaulins vaporized. And then came the fourth missile. It slammed into the side of the main structure, collapsing the grain storage area like a house of cards. Inside, hundreds of tons of wheat, powdered rations, and canned meats ignited. The grain dust, invisible, flammable, fed a secondary fire, creating a violent blast wave that ripped the roof off. Above, 3 FPV drones circled like vultures. One spotted a runaway fuel tanker and swooped down, punching the cabin, detonating inside the tank. The explosion was felt 12 kilometers away. By 6:10 a.m., the Volchansk depot was no longer a depot. It was a crater, a storm, a message. Military supplies were gone. At least 140 Russian soldiers were dead or seriously wounded, and not a single Ukrainian soldier was in sight. This was more than just an attack. It was a scalpel through the backbone of an army. Don't skim over it. The most shocking part of this attack is yet to come. 6:15 a.m. The sky above Volchansk is no longer blue. It spirals in smoke, thick, black, and angry, forming a tornado of ash that twists above what was once Russia's most fortified military warehouse. Flames roar at over 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit, turning steel into liquid and walls into vapor. This isn't just a fire, it's a reckoning. Ukraine's final HIMARS missile, the 8th and most vital, finds its mark with flawless precision. It pierces the central data tower, the brain of the depot's entire supply infrastructure. The explosion is immediate, brutal. It doesn't just destroy metal at Saum, it deletes everything. Inventory logs, resupply schedules, digital troop maps, distribution algorithms. In one strike, Russia's 6-month logistical blueprint is wiped from existence. By 6:17 a.m., the Shark drone, the silent orchestrator and last observer, powers down its laser. It banks gently eastward, its camera catching one final image of the inferno below before slipping back into Ukrainian airspace. Mission complete. And then, silence. No more interceptors, no radar locks, no counterstrikes. Volchansk, once an impenetrable node of war readiness, is now a charred void on satellite feeds, flickering in infrared and static. The strategic cost is staggering. Over $180 million in material losses, including supplies, infrastructure, and critical communications gear. 10,000 frontline Russian troops, expected to be fed and equipped for the winter push, are now stranded without rations. Air defense systems, in sheer panic, are redeployed away from the front to defend other vulnerable depots, leaving gaps along the Kharkiv-Donbas line. But the most crippling damage isn't material. It's psychological. The S-400, once hailed as the unbreachable god of air defense, was blinded by $400 drones and outmaneuvered by a war plan that cost under $2 million. The Panzer, designed to intercept low-flying threats, fired blindly into illusions. And the Kasuka-4, Russia's pride in electronic warfare, overheated and shut down. Defeated by its own gluttony for power, Ukraine didn't just win a battle, they rewrote the doctrine of asymmetric warfare. In a war where money buys metal, they proved that mind beats machine. This was more than a strike. It was a precision-guided humiliation. In the following days, Russian state media scrambles to contain the narrative, claiming an accidental fire. But the satellites don't lie. The analysts don't stutter. And the world knows. This wasn't an accident. This was Ukraine's David moment. Not one stone, but 8 missiles. And a god made of steel, reduced to smoke. In war, power is often measured by size. The bigger missile, the louder explosion, the sheer number of tanks on the move. Russia built its entire military doctrine on that assumption, that volume, firepower, and spectacle would always prevail. They believed that by stacking steel high enough, no one would dare to resist. But in Volchansk, that illusion was burned down, along with the food meant to sustain 10,000 troops through winter. What Ukraine demonstrated wasn't just tactical excellence, it was a moral rejection of imperial arrogance. While Russia poured billions into S-400s, Panzer S-1s, and Kasuka-4 jamming systems, it never imagined that a nation with fewer men, smaller weapons, and cheaper tools could outplan them. It wasn't just hubris, it was a fatal underestimation of the human will. Volchansk wasn't lost to a blitzkrieg of tanks or a wave of paratroopers. It was surgically erased by drones that cost less than a laptop and HIMARS missiles that cost less than 5% of the value of what they destroyed. $400 drones jammed billion-dollar radars. Laser-guided missiles hit targets with meter-level accuracy without GPS support. And a depot fortified by concrete and overconfidence never saw it coming. This was David versus Goliath, rewritten in code, precision, and silence. But unlike the biblical tale, David didn't just win. He dismantled the myth, system by system, flaw by flaw. Volchansk will not just be remembered for what burned, but for what it revealed. That in modern warfare, pride is the weakest armor. To every empire that believes budget equals dominance, Ukraine offered a chilling warning. Never underestimate a people who are fighting for their home. They may not have the most allies or the heaviest machines, but they have resolve. They have memory. And in wars like these, that may be the only weapon that never runs out. Let the ashes of Volchansk serve as a monument to the most expensive mistake any superpower can make: underestimating the desperate. By the time the last embers at Volchansk faded, it was already too late for Russia to respond. Their retaliation, if any, came hours too late, aimed at empty fields and already vacated positions. Ukraine had vanished back into the fog, leaving behind only a crater, a memory, and a lesson. This was not merely a destruction of food, it was the dismantling of morale, the collapse of logistics, the symbolic severing of a lifeline. For soldiers on the front line, the ones counting on those rations to fuel them through the winter, the message was clear: no supply line is safe. And to the world, Ukraine issued another warning. This is what modern war looks like. A country once underestimated, outgunned, and outspent now operates with scalpel-like precision, leveraging American-made missiles, homemade drones, and digital warfare in a ballet of controlled devastation. For every $1 million Russia spends on defense, Ukraine is spending thousands to outwit it, and winning. The Volchansk strike will be studied in war colleges for decades, not because of its size, but because of its surgical simplicity. No air force, no tanks, just silence, fog, and timing. It wasn't brute force, it was brilliance under pressure. And now, as Russia scrambles to secure its remaining supply depots, every radar operator, every commander, every foot soldier will look to the sky and wonder if the birds overhead are really birds. Because if Ukraine has taught us anything, it's that the deadliest weapon in this war might just have wings. If you found this analysis insightful and want to support more in-depth breakdowns like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next unfolding conflict.